Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. For today, our group would like to present about literacy and issue of home financing in Malaysia. So this is our group members. Our group consists of 5 members. So let's not waste time and let us begin the presentation. Hi and Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Muhammad Zulafnan bin Zulkikli and let us start our presentation. Let us look at the introduction first. As everyone know, house is a basic needs for human and it is a place for us to call home. So house play an important role in human life because it acts as a shelter for us to rest, to sleep, to protect ourselves from dangers and the weather and to provide us comfort. For most people, owning a house is a primary goal for them, and they are willingly to go into debt for it. This is because not everyone have the luxury to own a house for them and their families, which is why having a home financing help them to fulfill their goals. In Malaysia, Islamic home financing are based on a few contracts such as baik bersamaan ajil, musyarakah mutanah kisah, istisna and tawarruk. All these contracts will be explained later in the presentation. Okay, now let's take a look at the overview of Islamic home financing in Malaysia. In Malaysia, we practice the dual banking system, which means there are conventional banks and Islamic banks, and that's make the consumer have many choices to choose from. However, before the coming of dual banking system, there's only a conventional banks. But since the introduction of the dual banking, so the Islamic home financing were introduced as the substitute to the conventional version. But many people thought that the Islamic home financing were just a mirror to the conventional system. However, it is different because conventional home financing were interest driven. However, Islamic home financing are not interest driven because it avoids prohibited element in order to comply with Sharia. Alright, let's move on to the other overview of Islamic home financing in Malaysia. In Malaysia, house affordability is a problem and will remain as an issue because the prices of the house in Malaysia escalated significantly for the past decade, and this will make owning a house more difficult, which is why financing is needed because there's demand. And owning a house is such a huge financial investment. And in Malaysia, for the home financing, there are two types, which is first home financing scheme provided by the government and the financing provided by the private financial institution. As for the private financial institution, they provide many products for the house financing for us consumer to choose from.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fikri bin Ibrahim. Now we will proceed to the first contract in Islamic home financing, which is BBA home financing by Bersamaan Ajil. So this concept was introduced in Malaysia by BIMB Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad in 1984. The product is an alternative to the conventional housing loan offered by most conventional banks, as it is said to be Sharia compliant and free from riba, gharar and maisir. But Bersamaan Ajil contract is based on the concept of murabaha, whereby the sale price is added up with profit. For home financing, it means the bank buys the property and sells it to a customer at an agreed price, which includes the principal plus amount of profit that needs to be paid over specified number of years. Usually, BBA is used for financing property, vehicle and other consumer goods. When the agreement has been achieved by both parties, customer and the bank, then the customer needs to make a payment in a form of installment over a specified period. Next, we will move on to the modus operandi of BBA contract in home financing. For the first step, the client will approach the house developer to identify the home that he wishes to buy. He needs to sign a sale and purchase agreement with the house developer Then the bank will purchase the house and sign the property purchase agreement with the customer. Next, the bank will sell the asset back to the customer at the agreed price, which is actual cost plus profit, and signs the property sales agreement. And lastly, the customer will bear the responsibility to settle all the payment throughout the financing period. There are two important agreements in BBA financing. The first one is PPA, which is Property Purchase Agreement. It is an agreement which is exempted from stamp duty made between the bank and the customer. Maksud kat sini perjanjian antara bank dan pelanggan yang tak memerlukan duty stamp. Second is Property Sale Agreement, PSA. It is an agreement which is subject to ad valorem stamp duty made between the bank and the customer. Dalam perjanjian ni, bank dia akan jual semula aset ataupun rumah kepada pembeli dengan harga asal rumah yang telah ditambah dengan keuntungan kepada pembiaya iaitu bank pada jangka masa yang telah dipersetujui. Issue that arises from this type of contract is financing for home that still under construction or incomplete. So the problem occurred when the developer fails to complete the house project on time. This will give a problem to the customer because they need to suffer a huge losses since the BBA contract includes profit taken by the financier. Besides that, if the customer does not own any other house, they need to rent other place to stay, which will further give additional cost to them to be settled. As a solution for this issue, there are several steps that can be taken. Firstly, BNM can play important role by regulating the rebate that the banks can and should give to the BBA customers to reduce the outstanding balance. Maksud kat sini, BNM ni kena pastikan bahawa jumlah rebate yang diberikan adalah cukup besar supaya baki pembiayaan di bawah BBA ni adalah serupa dengan baki di bawah pembiayaan konvensional. Next phasing out BBA contracts and replacing them with musyarakah mutanakisah concept. So customers do not end up owing too much money to the bank. Third, BBA home financing contract should only be applicable for completed properties. And lastly, using parallel istisna contract for financing of homes that still under construction. This approach might help to improve the welfare of the customer better in case of abandoned house project because the financier will responsible for the construction of the house in full conformity.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muammar bin Khairi. Today I would like to present to you about musyarakah mutanakisah in home financing. Firstly, we go through the definition of musyarakah mutanakisah. Musyarakah mutanakisah is a joint ownership of asset purchase between bank and customer, and the profit and loss sharing attributes and gradual transfer of asset of ownership over periods of installment. Okay. Second is musyarakah mutanakisah is a contract of partnership between two parties, which is the bank and the customer, where one partner gradually buys the whole part of the property. There are three main contracts involved in musyarakah mutanakisah. First, which is musyarakah, ijarah, and albay. Firstly, the customer will enter into a musyarakah contract between the customer and the bank to co-own an asset. Second, the bank will list its shares of asset of ownership to the customer under the concept of ijarah. For example, the customer pays 30% of the asset as a down payment. Therefore, it will be the customer initial share to co-own the asset, while the bank will provide the balance of 80%. And thirdly, is the customer will gradually buy the bank's 80% shares at a agreed portion periodically until the asset is fully owned by the customer. Okay, now we will go through the modus operandi of musyarakah mutanakisah home financing. Okay, firstly, a customer who wants to buy a real property applies for a financing from an Islamic institution. The Islamic institution and the customer will jointly purchase the real property based on determined share. For example, 90-10 20-10 ratio or 80-10 ratio, depending on the amount of financing requested. Thirdly, the deposit paid by the customer is deemed as the initial share of ownership. The financial institution share of ownership will be leased based on ijarah to the customer. And lastly, the customer will pay the monthly installment that will gradually decrease the bank share until it is fully owned by the customer. As we go through the issues of musyarakah mutlaqisah, which is the issue of combination of contract. As we know, it is prohibited to use two contracts at the same time. For example, the bike contract can only be entered after completion of the ijarah contract. The contract cannot simultaneously used at the same time. In the 56th meeting of the Syariah Advisory Council, it is concluded that the contract of musyarakah in ijarah in one document of agreement is permissible as long as the contract are concluded separately and clearly. Also, the Syariah Advisory Board of each Islamic financial institution have the right to monitor to ensure that the contract is Syariah compliant and conclude at different times.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Soleh bin Muhammad Ramli. I will continue to present about contract that involve in home financing in Malaysia. I will go through to the bait tawarruk. The definition is, it is an arrangement which consists of two sale and purchase contract. The first involves the sale of an asset to purchaser on a deferred payment basis, and the second subsequent sale involves sale of an asset to a third party on a cash basis. The sale and purchase contract may be based on murabahah and musawamah. Next, I will continue to the types of tawarruk, which is, there is two types of tawarruk. First is tawarruk fardi, and then second is tawarruk munazzam. First tawarruk fardi is classical tawarruk whereby the purchaser in the first sale contract would sell the purchased item to any third party in order to get cash. Second is tawarruk munazzam, is, or we call it organized tawarruk, which the seller would facilitate the purchaser to sell the purchased item for the cash. Now I will explain about modus operandi in bait tawarruk. I will explain about modus operandi in bahasa. Baiklah, sekarang saya akan menerangkan sedikit sebanyak dan secara ringkas berkaitan dengan modus operandi dalam bait tawarruk. Pada mulanya, pelanggan akan melakukan permohonan pembiayaan dengan bank. Sebagai contoh, pelanggan membuat pembiayaan dengan bank sebanyak RM10,000. Kemudian bank akan membeli komoditi daripada mana-mana broker dengan harga yang sama dengan nilai pembiayaan yang telah dimohon oleh pelanggan tersebut, iaitu sebanyak RM10,000. Apabila komoditi tersebut telah menjadi hak sepenuhnya ke atas bank, ia akan dijualkan kembali kepada pelanggan, dan dia akan jualkan kembali kepada pelanggan dengan harga yang lebih tinggi. Maksudnya bank mendapatkan keuntungan sedikit daripada penjualan itu. Sebagai contoh, bank menjualkan kembali kepada pelanggan sebanyak RM12,000 dengan bayaran tertangguh. Kemudian apabila perjanjian itu telah diikat dan pelanggan akan membayar secara tertangguh, dan masa yang sama pelanggan mendapat hak milik sepenuhnya ke atas komoditi tersebut. Walau bagaimanapun, pelanggan bukan ingin mendapatkan barang komoditi tersebut, tetapi pelanggan ingin mendapatkan wang secara tunai untuk digunakan oleh mereka. Kemudian pelanggan akan menjual kembali komoditi tersebut, tetapi dengan melalui ejen yang di bawah bank tersebut. Ejen tersebut akan menjualkan komoditi tersebut kepada mana-mana broker. Sebagai contoh, kepada broker B dengan harga yang sama dengan pembiayaan yang telah dimohon dengan bank tersebut iaitu sebanyak RM10,000. Kemudian apabila broker B membeli barang komoditi tersebut, maka wang telah yang diperolehi daripada pembelian tersebut akan diberikan kepada pelanggan, dan pelanggan akan dapat menggunakan wang tersebut untuk tujuan-tujuan yang mereka hendaklah. Maka ia telah lengkap dalam proses dalam baik tawaruk ini, dan pelanggan tersebut akan tetap membayar pembelian dengan bayaran tertangguh tadi kepada bank dengan tempoh yang telah ditetapkan oleh bank sebanyak RM12,000. Dan itu sahaja penerangan berkaitan dengan modus operandi. Thank you. Now I will share about issue in tawarruk, which is conflict within scholars about application of tawarruk in Islamic banking. Firstly, there is two types of view in baik tawarruk, which is permissible and non-permissible. Permissible is from Syafi'i, Maliki and Hanbali scholar. Why they say permissible baik tawarruk in Islamic banking? Is because basic ruling on sale in ibahah legalization, which mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 257. Based on ayah, there is no trace of a riba in this type of sale. Second is non-permissible by some of Hanafi school. Why they say baik tawarruk is non-permissible contract in Islamic banking is because tough name of tawarruk is by inna, which is have character that lead to riba. That's all. Thank you.
My name is Muammar Azizi bin Samsuddin. Now let's see home financing by buying istisna. Literally, istisna is derived from the Arabic verb istasna'a, which means to request someone to manufacture an asset. Technically, it is a contractual agreement with a manufacturer to produce item with specific description at a determined price and manufactured from his own material with his own effort. There is two types of bay' al-istisna, which is classical istisna and parallel istisna, which known as istisna mawazi. The modus operandi for classical istisna contract is the normal istisna contract that involve two transacting parties, which is the customer mustasni' and the manufacturer sani'. Meanwhile, the parallel istisna is a contractual agreement consists of two series of separate istisna contract, whereby the first istisna contract is between the purchaser, customer and the seller, the bank, who is responsible for delivering the specific asset to the purchaser. Okay, now let's see the issue of bay' al-istisna. SAC was referred in the case of debt or cancellation of the contracting parties in istisna contract. The first one is the right of mustasni' in the case of the debt of sani' in the context of an individual, or in dissolution of sani' in the context of a company. And the second one is the right of sani' in the case of mustasni' in the context of an individual, or dissolution of mustasni' in the context of a company. The solution for this issue is the SAC has ruled that in case of debt or dissolution of manufacturer, sani', customer, mustasni' is entitled to the following option, which is the first one is mustasni' receive the asset. The effect is that the mustasni' has to pay the price of asset of the istisna based on the rate of the asset that has been complete, and the ownership of the istisna asset is transferred to the mustasni', or mustasni' cancel fasakh the istisna contract. The effect is that mustasni is entitled to claim all the sale price of the istisna assets which has been paid from the estate of the sani or the asset of the dissolved company. In the case of the death or dissolution of the mustasni, the SAC has decided that the payment of the sale price of the istisna asset is borne by the estate of the mustasni or the asset of the dissolved company.
In conclusion, home financing is important for us to own a house because it fulfills our primary goal in life. In Malaysia, where the dual banking system is introduced, Islamic home financing also introduced for us in order to act as a substitute for the conventional home financing. It helps us a lot, especially for the Muslim consumer, where it's a majority in Malaysia. So, the Islamic home financing provide us with financing that avoid the prohibited element to comply with Sharia. There are also many choices for us to choose from, and this financing use the contract in Islamic teaching. I think that's all from us. Thank you for our participation.